Dirty work. The next day, Nutley or Hansen showed up for work in Michigan. It was like a normal morning, Monday morning. Rolf Sorley skied back into the mountains and disappeared. Nut Hocklid took a train to the city of Oslo. If anything had gone wrong with the ferry job, his mission was to try again to destroy the heavy water before it sailed for Germany. On a busy Oslo street, Hocklid stopped at a newsstand. It was front page news in every paper. Railway ferry hydro sunk. He bought a paper and read, the wrecked ferry lay 1,300 feet below the lake's surface. A rescue boat pulled 27 people from the water. 26, many of them Norwegian civilians, went down with the ferry. The paper said nothing, knew nothing about the ferry's cargo. Hocklid slipped across the border to Sweden, beyond the reach of the German search for the ferry boat saboteurs. In the capital city of Stockholm, he took warm baths and put on clean clothes and ate in the brightly lit restaurants. But he was in no mood for such luxuries. I was thoroughly tired of being there, he said, and longed to get back to the mountains and our comrades in Norway. Hocklid skied across the border and rejoined the resistance. He would continue battling the German army until the end of the war. Leslie Groves was pleased by the news from Norway. Pleased, not satisfied. Yes, he'd managed to deny key material to the Germans. But the bottom line was this. He still had no idea what was going on inside Germans' weapons labs. We were truly in the dark about their progress in atomic development, Groves later said. The biggest danger, Groves figured, came from world-class German physicists, unless and until we had positive knowledge to the contrary. He explained, we had to assume that the most competent German scientists and engineers were working on an atomic program with the full support of their government. Groves talked it over with Oppenheimer and the other scientists at Los Alamos, many of whom had studied and worked in Germany before the war. Groves wanted to know the names of the most brilliant German physicists, the ones most likely to succeed giving Hitler an atomic bomb. They all agreed on one name, Werner Heisenberg. The position of Heisenberg in German physics is essentially unique, Oppenheimer said. He'd be at the head of any serious German program. The German-born physicist Hans Bethe even had an idea of what to do about it. Kidnapping Heisenberg, said Bethe, would greatly limit the German project. Groves considered the idea. Kidnapping was not part of his job description, but he was ready to do whatever it took to win this race. He passed the suggestion on to a fellow general, asking the man to raise the subject with Army Chief of Staff General George Marshall. Marshall's reply came back. Tell Groves to take care of his own dirty work. Groves took careful note of the wording. Marshall didn't want to know about Groves's dirty work, but he didn't tell Groves not to get dirty. This was a job for a new top-secret government agency, the Office of Strategic Services, OSS. Specifically, it was a job for Colonel Karl Eifler. The 37-year-old Eifler already had a reputation for reckless bravery. Wounded by flying metal scraps earlier in the war, he'd pulled out his pocket knife and dug the steel from his thigh. His idea of fun was to shoot cigarettes out of his friend's mouths. In late 1943, Eifler was working for the OSS somewhere in the jungles of Southeast Asia. Fighting behind Japanese lines, he organized hit-and-run raids on enemy troops. He enjoyed the work and was disappointed to receive a mysterious order. On or about 9 December 1943, you will proceed from Nazaria, India, to Headquarters Office of Strategic Services, Washington, D.C., for temporary duty. Eifler flew to Washington, wondering what he could possibly do so far from the action. Soon after arriving, he pulled a clean uniform over his muscular 250-pound frame and drove to the OSS building. He walked in and was headed toward the director's office when he spotted a man he knew, a young lawyer who'd once dared to criticize Eifler in an official report. Eifler lunged at the small man, seized him by his jacket, lifted him off the floor, and smacked his back into the wall. Eifler leaned in close, glaring in the man's eyes. "Listen, you," he growled. "If you ever interfere in my activities again, I'll kill you." Eifler set the lawyer down, turned, and walked into his meeting. He was greeted by Major Robert Furman, General Groves' top intelligence officer. "What can you tell me of my new assignment?" asked Eifler. Without getting into specifics, Furman explained that the United States and Germany were racing to make a new kind of bomb. If the Germans won the race, they'd win the war. At this point, said Furman, the most dangerous tool the Germans had was between the ears of a physicist named Werner Heisenberg. Eifler had no idea who Heisenberg was and didn't ask. Instead, he said, "You want me to bump him off?" "By no means," said Furman. "Our purpose is to deny the enemy his brain." Eifler waited for more. "Colonel Eifler," began Furman, "do you think you can kidnap this man and bring him to us?" "When do I start?" "By God," shouted Furman, banging the table, "that's the most refreshing thing I've heard in this whole darn war." Several days later, Eifler was back at the OSS headquarters, meeting this time with Director William Donovan and two of his top officers. "Carl," said Donovan, "this new operation will not even be given a code name. It is one of the biggest items of the war to date. We cannot even tell you how much the men you will be we cannot even tell you much about the men you will be working with." Eifler raised no objection. Colonel Ned Buxton asked, "Well, Eifler, have you selected a plan?" "Yes, sir," said Eifler, "I have." Buxton gestured for Eifler to continue. "I will go through Switzerland," said Eifler. He explained how he'd sneak across the border into Germany, grab Heisenberg, and drag him back to Switzerland. "From there," said Eifler, "I'll take him to a certain airport where you will fly him out." Buxton pointed out that the Swiss, who were neutral in the war, would raise a stink at having their territory used this way. "Well," he said, "they just have to get over it." He agreed to send an army plane to pick Eifler and Heisenberg up to fly them over the open Atlantic Ocean. "Once clear of the European coast," said Buxton, "you and the scientists will be dropped to one of our submarines, which will take you aboard for return to the United States." "If the timing of the plane and submarine are off," said Eifler, "or the submarine is being chased by German subs, or a hurricane is blowing when you get ready to ditch, what of these possibilities?" Buxton and Donovan exchanged glances, smiling. "Eifler," said Buxton, "you're the last person in the world to be talking of risks." Eifler conceded the point, but he did have one tactical question. "I've kidnapped this man and smuggled him safely back to Switzerland. Now suddenly I'm surrounded by Swiss police and can't get him to the airfield. What are my orders?" "Very simple, Colonel," said Buxton. "You are to deny Germany the use of his brain." "The only way to do that is to kill him," said Eifler. "So I kill him and the Swiss police arrest me. What then?" "Then we've never heard of you."